Thank you so much, Leonore, for joining us. Today, we're joined by Leonore van Wyk, who is an avid DI leader and ESG enthusiast. She has done quite a lot of work in embedding culture at a giant company with over 16,000 colleagues globally, but also just doing so much transformational work as well within the world of DEI. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. So how did you get involved with this body of work of DEI?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, Bandile. I'm really happy and excited to be here. I got involved in DEI through voicing my concerns and my opinions to leadership. I just posed a very straightforward question in which I asked one of our senior leaders at the time, why do you think there aren't as many women in leadership roles? And I think that just created an opportunity for me to get involved in that initiatives at work, because that individual then realized that he acknowledged that it is something that the company has been trying to change, and these things, it doesn't come about overnight. And then I was fortunate enough for this individual that then connected me to you. And yeah, the rest was, so to speak, history. And I mean, we did some amazing work together where we could not just say that this is something that's important for us and for those that's going to come after us, but we could actually see the impact that it was making, not just for us, but for our colleagues. I mean, there was one initiative, this previous organization that I worked with, and they had realized it was not so to speak a problem, but there needed to be a cultural shift. And I think something that's really propelled or contributed to the landscape of DEI really being brought to the forefront for organizations was that George Floyd, that unfortunate and tragic George Floyd incident, So at least something positive came from that, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to just touch back on that COVID-19 pandemic fallout and the tragedies that happened, actually, the same boat but different storm, or the same storm but different boat narrative, which we talked about, I think, in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And touching on representation, because we've spoken briefly about representation and why I think a lot of people still struggle with understanding why representation is important, especially positive representation. Mm-hmm. Why is positive representation important for, let's say, someone coming into work, for someone who's just fresh out of as a graduate or an intern, or for example, for someone who is in position of organization structure? Why is representation important, and why is it important particularly to you, and how do you relate to that?
Representation is important because whether we realize it or not, it is a motivator. So for someone, for example, I'll take myself as a colored woman, fresh out of university, entering the workforce, especially in a corporate environment. The majority of those leadership roles, in my experience, were men. So I didn't really have that representation from the get-go. I mean, at the time, yes, I had a woman that was our manager when I first started entering the employment market. But representation creates motivation, and it makes you realize that what's possible for that person could be possible for me. And representation allows us to see that what we want and what we strive for ourselves shouldn't be limited, right? And it was quite recently, within, I think, the last week, or I'm not sure if it was this week, but at one of these award shows, they had two little girls interviewing the stars on the red carpet, and Issa Rae, who, I'm not sure if you watched the movie, Barbie, but she portrayed the role of the president in the movie, and one of these little girls I was interviewing, the stars on the red carpet, was a little black girl, and she told Issa Rae that, wow, I was just, you could just see her admiration and just, something in her eyes. And for that little girl, that representation means anything's possible for her. And so I think that instills in you just a motivation and a drive, just that encouragement to, why can't I go for what I want?
Yeah, nothing is stopping us from achieving our destiny, our strive for better, our strive for progression up the ladder, even if we're in the corporate world, or even just chasing a political career. I think that's where the power of business, as you eloquently put it, it just makes possibility reachable, and relatable. I mean, I can also say it's not far-fetched for me to be a manager, it's not far-fetched for me to be a people director, or to even go and be a board member. Is not far-fetched, So I think waking up into the wake of Black Lives Matter, which was in the mix as well during the heat of, or during the wake of the pandemic, we struggled with the narrative of unequal or inaccessible representation or inadequate representation, because we found, I think, in the wake of, during the midst of all of that, DEI grew quite substantially. We saw a lot of adoptions of pledges. A lot of companies made promises coming up with grandiose amounts of money, saying, we're going to pledge so much money to this community, we're going to, roll out our internship programs, do a lot of access opportunities to allow people of different communities to prioritize psychological safety. In that way, and looking now where we are today, would you say there's a disconnect, or there's still a connection towards those commitments that were made during the wake of that incident?
I think for me, I think that there will always be a slight disconnect if people don't realize, or they don't realize that as long as you employ people, you're going to have these uncomfortable discussions and maybe make difficult decisions, because if you are employing human beings, you're going to be interacting with people from different backgrounds, people with different experiences, people of different ethnicities, genders, etc. For me, the reason why DEI is important, especially in the workplace, is because these issues or problems, but they don't exist because of the workplace. They didn't result as a byproduct of people going to work. No, it resulted because people are bringing those prejudices, those mindsets, those, negativities with them to the workplace. So it's a matter of whether you like it or not, your personal life and your personal experience and thoughts spilling over into the work environment. So for me, that will always be there if you, so to speak, say you just talk the talk, but you don't necessarily walk the walk, right? So I think that's why it's so important, because if we can start at the workplace, we spend the majority of our time at work. If we can start making changes at work, it's just a matter of time before those changes fall into the personal lives, right? People then start making changes in their own personal lives. Okay, maybe I won't approach this social situation this way anymore, or maybe, hey, why don't I have any black friends? Little things like that can make a big impact down the line. So I think when it comes to DEI, that terminology is there because of corporate and work, but it's the everyday side that we should.
Yeah, and I think you either touched on as well on doing or walking the walk. You help leaders as well. Our previous joint project, I would call it, I love project, of doing the walk in reality. Doing the marathon, as leaders would call it, the marathon of inclusion. How do you feel that leaders are now better prepared to integrate systems and do a lot of systematic work to eliminate barriers of exclusion, but also at the same time tackle attitudes that people bring to the workplace? And how does that filter down into the people who's coming into the workplace? How do you feel that relationship is connected, or is that articulated for someone who wants to come into the world of work?
I think what's important is, and I think that's where I've been quite fortunate in a sense that I have been fortunate enough to work, in these large global corporations. But what's important for me is that I've seen and I've experienced firsthand how, if it's not sincere coming from leadership, then it's going to be a redundant exercise. It's not going to have an impact. It's just going to be a tick box, a pacifying exercise. But I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where I could see the sincerity flowing down from the top, basically, and then making an impact. And I say that because the leadership that I've had the fortune of interacting with, they realized why DEI was important. It's not all go to work for, a kumbaya moment. We all hold hands and we one big family, you go there to make a living, etc. But at the end of the day, you are interacting with people. We're not robots. We have feelings, we have different experiences, we have thoughts. So once leadership really realizes that, if we can actually be sincere and really put in an effort with our initiatives and making a change, how is that going to positively impact not just the individual but the organization itself? Because I'm a firm believer that any organization that's serious about not just making profit now, but to be profitable in the long run, longevity, sustainability, you're going to have DEI at the forefront of your objectives and priorities, because you're going to lose talent if people don't feel psychologically safe at work, right? If I, knock on wood, end up in an accident down, I need to go get surgery done, I'm not going to say only one, because I'm a colored woman, I only want a colored woman to operate on me. No. I'm going to want the best qualified, basically job, they have a proven track record to be operating on me, right? If that means that you are a sexual Asian man, and so be it, you are going to operate with no one else. You know what I mean? So it's a matter of, in essence, leadership realizing if we are actually treating people fairly and giving those opportunities to people who actually deserve it, and not overlooking them just because, of my prejudices or preconceived ideas, they're the ones that's actually going to take us to the next level. I think by getting that realization, if we don't invest in DEI, we're basically doing a disservice to our long-term. It's always fascinating for me how, by just including people, the big difference it can make, right? For example, when Juliana came out with her makeup line, right? It didn't stir something up in me, because celebrities were doing it all the time since today. But then you realize actually she's doing something different. And it's such a small thing that she was doing. But it was just mind-blowing. What was she doing? She was making shades of foundation for literally over 50 shades of foundation, which was unheard of for a beauty house, I think, at that stage. And, that's inclusion. That's saying my makeup is not just for a certain
demographic.
It's for everyone. And that's, I think, the mindset that organizations need to have. We don't just want this type of person from this type of university with this type of degree or qualification. Be diverse.
Yeah. So we don't know where the next best ideals come from.
Exactly.
At the same time. And I think touching on to beauty standards as well, I think we come now into a world where we are being more positive, being more mindful of difference, and how difference looks in different types of beauty, celebrating the different types of beauty that exist. What would you say to someone who feels that they are struggling with a conscious or subconscious level of self-hate, where they feel that there have to be bullies in order for them to be seen as authoritative? They have to be, very stern and very authoritative or commanding in the way of excluding people to gain power. A rivalry of leadership, different types of leadership styles. To reference, there's a war going on DEI, Elon Musk, and what's the $1 billion question? Why do you need DEI? We've summarized, the longevity aspects of it. But I think you'll see the type of toxic traits coming out of that conversation, where people, or when mostly men and white men, or white cisgender straight men, feel the need to perform a certain type of bullying. A certain type of behavior to assert dominance and to assert authoritativeness, and seen as an archetype of leadership. What do you envision the transition of leadership in viewing different types of communities, different types of beauties to be celebrated at different arm's length? What would you say would be needed for such leaders who are modeling that behavior right now?
Well, first of all, the first one that came to mind was intersection. And also self-awareness and just holding yourself accountable. Where is that mindset or that attitude coming from? You mentioned self-hate, and that is most often we are our own worst enemies. Doubting yourself, imposter syndrome, thinking I have to be a certain way, acting authoritative. And I think that is such a dated and archaic way to look at being a people manager or in a role of authority. Things like what I say goes my way or the highway. And I think that comes from just, that very dated way of looking at work, especially in the corporate environment. I think if we can have more people being open and willing to do some self-reflection, introspection, it can make a world of difference, because just treating someone, whether it's a colleague, a friend, a family member, just treating someone with consideration and kindness can make a world of difference. Lash out to keep others back because perhaps you're so scared of losing that power. Helping someone get to that next point in their career is more powerful than trying to gatekeep it, so to speak. You need to realize change is inevitable. You're not going to be in the same position 10, 5, 20 years from now. There's going to be someone coming after you. Someone before you is going to leave, and you're going to take their place, whatever. I think it's important to realize the wheel's always turning. But what are you doing? How are you contributing to wheel turning, in a smooth manner, so to speak? I hope that I've made a positive impact in some of my colleagues' work life or work experiences, because you always want to, people remember how you make them feel.
More than what you know.
Exactly. And, I'm very fortunate that the team that I'm currently in is very, very supportive, very collaborative, and it makes a world of difference. I'm unsure about something. I have that psychological safety. I can reach out to my team member. I can reach out to my boss. I don't feel that they are going to prejudge me or treat me unfairly. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on kindness, and I think we underestimate the power of kindness. I think just to contextualize kindness as well, it's a life-changing journey, because I actually discovered a lot of self-limitations that I had about myself. Almost speaking against the power of being credible to achieve something, or speaking against yourself of saying things, oh my God, I don't deserve, for example, to have this opportunity, or I don't deserve to be in this position. What would you say to almost overlook, we have a lot of diversity existing in the entry levels, but as you go up the way, it's still a very question mark landscape. We always wonder, where is the talent, where is the diversity? But we're all there by the floor, but nothing. What's happening? So what would you say would be, how do we leverage kindness out of that context? How do we learn from kindness to be kind leaders, to be kind, empathetic colleagues who have a sincerity of understanding, of listening to understand, who have the sincerity to dispel and break away from those cycles of self-talk and self-subtraction?
It's really true that you say, Bandile, because I feel most of the time we are our worst enemies, whether it's we're scared of something, the unknown, we're scared of going for a certain opportunity, that imposter syndrome that I mentioned earlier, and as well as, the fear of being outside of your comfort zone. And all of these things, I mean, it can be something as small as just applying for a new role at work, to trying a new hobby. We often, it just results in you holding yourself back from your full potential. And I think people need to realize, if you are entering the workplace, I was very naive when I started work, I came with that university mindset where, when you study and you just, if you put in the hours, you do your assignments, you attend class, the results are going to speak for themselves,
The meritocratic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I approached work with that same mindset, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to do what I need to do, and, it's going to happen for me. But the reality is, that's not really how it works. You can be the best performer, but if you are not really putting yourself out there, if you're not making connections, because that's really what can make an impact. What questions are you asking? What
have you arrived in the meeting? There's a saying that says, you never arrive in a meeting up until you speak.
No, but it's true.
But it is true, because people always remember the people who talk.
Yes.
They're the ones who were there.
Exactly. You're not going to get a participation trophy, but you're going to How are you contributing? How are you showing up? And I think for someone like myself, I was naive in that sense. So I looked at myself, what did I need to change? I'm not a very outgoing, extroverted person.
Yeah.
I'm not that person in the office walking around trying to this one at the desk. I'm like sitting at my computer, So I had to change that. I had to be more, force myself to be less myself in that sense. To be more outgoing at work. That way I would be in a meeting. I would have a thought or a question, but I haven't,
Yeah.
So then I told myself, if you have a thought or question, doesn't matter if you think how stupid or idiotic it may sound, do it. And that's how I slowly but surely forced myself. I had that fear, I had that doubt, but I forced myself. And that's how you slowly but surely start making an impact, because then your ideas are being considered, your thoughts are being an impact, and we changed this process. We've implemented this process. I think in that sense, it's very important to be kind to yourself and to not take things so personally at work. Another thing I just want to add is it's more important what you think of yourself and what other people think of you. I've had discussions in the past with colleagues where you try and motivate someone for, why did you do this opportunity? Why did you go for that? Why aren't you making use of these resources? No, this excuse, that excuse. So you are holding yourself back and, I don't want to go for that. Are they going to think, I'm sucking up to this person, or I'm trying to be teacher's pet? Who cares what they think? 5-10 years down the line, it's nothing to matter, because people don't think of you as often as you think they do. And I'm not going to sleep at night thinking, how can I get Bandile to that next level in his career? No offense. You know what I mean?
I think about
right? So you have to be accountable for yourself, and
you drive your own change.
There we go.
You have your own agency. I think that's what I also learned, not just in this work, but also in the advocacy of advocating the needs, communicating, as you say, the agency to empower yourself before someone else can empower you. Because it doesn't matter, as you say, it doesn't matter, you can give someone EAP programs, and you can give someone a lot of costless opportunity, almost like endless opportunities. Like, no, you can do this free course, you can do that to improve, or do this coaching or sponsorships. But if you don't see yourself in the position of success, you won't be successful.
Yeah.
And that image of that self is quite important, and that timeless journey was quite revealing as well. Slowly to code switching, I think you already mentioned growth. I think there's almost like a twin side of that. Code switching in certain situations to, most introverts do it, because you have to step out of your shell of being comfortable with silence. I know I'm also easily an introvert. I just get so comfortable with my silence and just I will speak when I need to speak. But how do you learn to be assertive in knowing that your voice is enough in the room? That the seat at the table is enough. You don't have to beg anyone. You can invite yourself to go at the table.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for an invitation. You can just stand up and say, hey, I want to pitch an idea to the business. And this is what I think the talent strategy should look like. I think that's what we did as a group. We
we were quite forward.
Yeah, we were very forward. But we took the loss in those 6 months. Because I remember 6 months later, a lot of things changed. And we were so surprised by ourselves. Okay, what's next?
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. But that just shows, right? If you have an idea, doesn't matter how big or small, if you believe in it, and if you can sell that idea, then the world is your oyster, so to speak. And I know it sounds so much like a cliche, but there's a reason why people say things like that, because it's kind of proven, so to speak. And you mentioned code switching, and I am guilty of that. I have a very colloquial, informal way of speaking. So when I'm in a professional setting, I have different levels of code switching where I pretty much still be myself if in our morning team catch up. But if it's a more, formal meeting scenario, I do clean it up a bit. But I don't see code switching as something as a negative thing, or I see it as a skill set, and for for people like us, that's not white, that's not at the top of the food chain, so to speak. It is a survival skill. And it's something, I don't think it's something to look at negatively.
Yeah.
It's just the realities of life, you are never the same in every single environment. So whether you're conscious of it or not, in your personal life, you do code switch.
Yeah. I mean, for example, all of the time you code switch because you have to think about your safety, you have to think about your livelihood, you have to think about your life. You know, am I gonna walk down the street and come out alive? Or do I have to change how I walk? You know, it's just such minute things that we almost undermine as people.
Yeah.
Okay, now there's a herd of people there. How do I get out of safely without thinking of trauma being happening to me? And such thoughts are reflections of systematic ways of how these systems have been structured to not allow difference or to subtract.
Yeah.
And, you know, now that brings me to this almost revolving question of, you know, how do we drive ourselves and allies and the people that need to be brought into that? Because then most of the time in our work, you realize that you advocate for inclusion and automatically people think exclusion. You know, the people think that if I have to include Leonore as a leader, that means I have to subtract someone's chair. You know, what do you think about that? Because there's two sides of the coin, but I think that's where the fear of these dangerous talks come from. It's like, if we are, because that's how they are used to progress, you know, they are used to a progress that is subtractive, that is extractionary.
Yeah.
You know, that's a vacuum up and you just leave nothing behind. So how do you relate in that context of bridging that gap of like not just code switching, but also the subtraction dilemma?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, in any situation in life, wherever there's going to be a winner, it means that there's going to have to be a loser as well. And the thing with DI, and I think that's also why a lot of people are fearful of it, is because they have that viewpoint of it. We try to take something away from one group to give to another. That's not my interpretation or reality or viewpoint of DI. DI for me is realizing that certain groups have an advantage. They have a different starting point towards other groups. So DI is about leveling that field for everyone and making the scope of opportunities available to everyone and not just a certain demographic. So I think a way to bridge that gap is, and I think obviously it comes from the top but start at the bottom. You know, when you have, let's say, your new graduates joining, when it comes time for promotion, do it a fair and in a fairly sustainable way, you know, by recognizing those that are performing and making a positive impact, not just because of how you perceive someone would be performing just based on their appearance or what you think they are about. And it's easy to say these things, but I think for everyone who understands and realizes why DI is important, why equity, why fairness is important. Once you get into that role, into that position, don't forget that. Yeah. Because you're going to be in an unfortunate position of power where you can make a positive impact down the line. So I think it's difficult changing people's existing mindsets. It's not easy, but I think it can be easy for you once you are in that position. How are you going to use that? How are you, going to leave that role for the next person?
Because life keeps changing. They say their life is just a changing cycle of movement. So what are your predictions for this year? I mean, we are starting now into 2024. A lot of the year of change. You know, change is just going to arrive globally and locally. Elections are almost like just upcoming. What are your almost go-to points? And the industry as well, as we know, DI is vastly growing. AI is coming to the fore more prominently across not just our industry as well, but so many industries have absorbed and are readapting to that reality. Jobs are shape-shifting, a lot of anxieties around that. What are your almost like top 5 look forward to things that you are hoping that they still stick by in this, not just in this age, but also in your life, that you believe that they are so crucial and so omnipresent, I would say that they are omni-channels of success, that we shouldn't let go of?
I think what stands out to me is just people's resilience in not just making it through, this difficult times that we are in, with everything that's going on in the world, but resilience in the sense that regardless of what happens today, life goes on, but you have that resilience in the sense that you're not going to let whatever negativity that's going on in the world negatively impact or influence how you're going to live your life. So I think what I'm looking forward to, or I don't want to say looking forward to, something that I've been enjoying and really enjoy seeing is just how technology has allowed us to learn more about other people's experiences, and how technology just provides us with this platform to just find people that care as much as you do about the same things, right? And I think we're at that point where people aren't scared to voice their opinions, in a sense that this isn't right. Just because this has been going on, or we've been doing things a certain way for decades, doesn't mean it's the right way. I think that's what excites me. It's that people are more open to having these uncomfortable discussions and, touching on these topics and creating awareness. Like, for example, this ideas podcast, you know what I mean? Like, thinking back of, imagine how impactful something like this would have been for me as being in high school or being at university. Because, back then, things weren't as progressive or as easily accessible as they are today. So I think that excites me about the future. And you mentioned AI, that's technology. It is really exciting. But on the one hand, it also just proves how much work we have to do. For example, I've heard not horror stories, but asking AI to create a picture of someone, yeah, and also still the discrimination within AI itself.
Biases are coded into that.
Exactly. On the one hand, we're making so many wonderful changes in the world, advancements in, technology, the kind of discussions that we are having, what's acceptable now versus what was acceptable 20 years ago. But on the same hand, it's still kind of, that's still that same struggle. It's not something that we're going to solve or eradicate overnight or easily, but it's an ongoing issue. And I feel if it's something that you're passionate about, for example, you're passionate about DEI, it's something that spills over in both my personal and my professional lives. So whatever small impact we are making, I believe it's going to have a domino effect. Yeah.
I think I was also listening to a snippet of a podcast from a different podcaster, and the guest was talking about how positivity is quite, use this word, infectious. And also how negativity is also infectious, how aligning yourself with people who are also in the same mind, or similar, not same mind, but similar mindset that are trying to grow, how that actually has a profound impact on you. And how would you really have a lived experience of reaching a life experience that is positivity? How do you begin transition towards that as someone?
If you are willing to take that step, you have to realize you're going to learn and discover some things about yourself
that's uncomfortable,
that you're not going to be proud of, you're not going to like. And that a lot of people get to that point, but then it's like, okay, no, I don't like it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's where you have to start, continue to push through and go through, because you're going to realize that it's almost like unlocking a new world for yourself. And I say that as someone who has done it himself.
What was your journey like on that, if you don't mind?
I think for me, a big part was I started my tertiary education at Stellenbosch University, and I completed my studies at the University of the Western Cape, where I obtained my master's degree in public administration. But I mentioned that because it was almost a repeat of a previous experience earlier on in my life, where I went from a very, very white, very Afrikaans kind of institution background to a more English, predominantly colored environment where I'm originally from the Northern Cape, small town called Keynes Uppington in the Northern Cape. And I moved to Cape Town with my family when I was 12. And I mentioned that because that was a very profound experience for me. At the time, you don't have the knowledge or the language to understand or experience what you are experiencing or feeling. But looking back, I understand now. So what happened with me in my formative years, being in a very, very white, very Afrikaans schooling environment, you were just made aware that where you were basically down in the hierarchy, and you was clearly was on top. Then starting grade 6 in Cape Town, being not trusted, but it was the closest school to where we stayed at the time, and it was an English medium school. So I had this experience where I went from, very Afrikaans, very white to very English, and then predominantly colored pupils, and then I had colored teachers for the first time.
How did that feel?
It was just like.
Was it a culture shock?
It was very much a culture shock, and I can tell you because I remember this. I'll never forget. This white boy approached me at school, and he basically told me that he has a crush on my friend, and he was trying to get me to put in a good word for him. And I remember looking at this boy and thinking, does he not know that she's colored? It was such a I couldn't connect the thought because where I came from, it was just
a taboo almost.
You don't think about that. So that was so significant for me, where I realized, wow, things can actually be different in the world. And then seeing actual teachers teaching me that's color that looks like me, it was empowering. That's how it felt. But as a 12-year-old at that time, you don't have the vocabulary or the understanding to really grasp what you are thinking or feeling in that sense. And then, I also came from where we would have award evenings back in Uppington, but I was never included in part of that. And then it was such a shock for me when we moved to Cape Town, because I remember it was towards the end of the year, we were lining up for our school assembly, and I remember a girl saying, I think Lenore's going to get the award for maths. And this boy, I'll never forget this. He basically, no, she's only clear in Afrikaans, because we being Afrikaans speaking. And I just thought, okay, that's kind of a weird thing to say. But I really understood how I was being perceived, speaking with a bit of an accent, pronouncing words wrong. People think, oh, you're a bit silly or what, What happened was, for the first time in my life, I received that recognition for my potential, because I ended up being first in my class. I did get the award for Afrikaans, but I also did get a math award.
Congratulations.
So, for years to grade 6, it's not a big deal, but for me, it showed me that what I used to think and feel about myself while I was going to school in Uppington still, I was right about myself. I was like, I am capable. So those 2 moments were really significant for me. I was 12 years old, and it made a lasting impact on my life. And I kind of experienced something similar again when I made that move from Stellenbosch to GWC, where beautiful university, a lot of opportunities, but then UWC is a bit less fortunate in that case, but in terms of resources. And I got to interact and have discussions with people I don't think I necessarily would have had if I continued at Stellenbosch. And I say that because I think it's also to do with the discipline that I was studying. Public administration, you have to touch on these social topics. You have to have these uncomfortable conversations already from your tertiary education. So that changed my whole viewpoint and outlook. And I think that's also why I feel so passionate about DEI, because I could see the difference in opportunities and resources between the two establishments in a sense that it's disheartening in one side, but then when you look at how hard people work and then their backgrounds, you take their backgrounds into consideration. I don't see how that doesn't motivate you to just to do something, whatever it is. I'm not saying you should all strive to be that top CEO billionaire, Your dream can be, I don't know, big or small, but just try and do something. And if you're going to do something, try and make a positive change.
If anything,
be kind. And be kind to yourself first. Yeah, it's so easy to believe the bad things.
Easy to even list the reasons why you don't need something, or why you can't be something. It's easy to just say, "Oh my gosh, I can't live. I can't go to Cape Town, example. I can't win that award." So easy to subtract yourself away from that opportunity. The list can grow as many as the excuses grow, because we always can come up with excuses at the end of the day. I mean, excuses are easy.
Exactly. Like my mother instilled both my parents huge inspirations for me. I think that's why I'm so involved in the I mean, back in the early 90s, my father was heavily involved in, things in lobbying and leading marches and picking those tarred and parade, making an impact in your community. My mother has that same sense of, try and give back, try and make a positive impact, especially if you are in a position
of power,
exactly,
influence,
And if you, I'll never forget this, but it's my mother has this reasoning. If you never, then the answer is always going to be no. So if you never put yourself out there, if you never go for something,
you won't know.
Right? So now you're sitting here second guessing yourself. I'm not gonna apply for that. I think no.
They haven't said no yet.
They haven't said no yet, but you're already telling yourself no. So I think in that sense, be kind to yourself and try and be your own biggest cheerleader. Because look at where you are now, Bandile. Look at 5 years ago.
Different landscape, different time.
And that's what being an inspiration is all about. Making positive impacts, not in just your own life, but in other people's lives. Thank you for this and for the work that you're doing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a phenomenal journey, I won't lie. It's been transformative because you actually realize how much more you have to do. And that challenges you to dream even bigger. I think I was telling my partner as well, if your dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. Yes.
That's my motto. If something scares me, I'm gonna have to go for it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go for it now. Whether this isn't something I would naturally do, but it's like you want to do it, but you're so scared that you talk yourself out of it and try and make yourself feel that no, I actually don't want. But actually,
at the end of the day, growth is quite uncomfortable. It's because it's part of change, and you only appreciate it when you're on the other side. You're like, I don't remember why I was scared.
Goodness, it's like it is. It just reminds me of when we started working together on DI initiatives. We were put into the deep end quite quickly, but I feel that we were taken seriously very quickly, and that's how we ended up, having those discussions with a CEO of a company that
prioritizing women's manifest.
Exactly.
Brand minds for South Africa,
Yeah, and people at that level of their careers say, time is money, and they take time out of their schedules to contribute to making that positive change and
to hear what we have to say, our value proposition.
Exactly, and to just influence in turn the rest of the organization and making changes. We make tangible changes. It feels like we're blowing our own horn now. It's fun. So that was something. I think what was rewarding for me is that we could see the changes immediately. And what's significant for me is that people saw the changes that was happening and the impact that it was having, but they were still reluctant and scared to become an active part of it. And I think that was just maybe it's because South Africa itself has a long way to go. So I think maybe we were just a bit more fearless in that sense, really.
Well, we're already at the psychological safety enough for us to say we have nothing to lose because this is what we are all passionate about. I think all 7 or 8 of us, we were driven, we were so dedicated to the results. We knew that if it meant our quarter-end work had to come first, and then we had to switch on lights for 5 additional hours just to get those work done. We did that. We were not afraid of that work. We were not afraid to pick up the can and throw it in the bin instead of kicking it down the road. So I think that initiative, and also it helped to have aligned leadership. That leadership alignment was was quite powerful because, as you say, not only were they dealing with a merger, not only were they dealing with a lot of things on their calendar, they took the time to actually say, we're going to embed this culture that we want to set a tone for. They were listening to us at such a level. I think with other people being hesitant, I think they were still in a fear of lacking the psychological safety that we already had arrived at. I mean, everyone's journey is different,
Exactly.
So I think that buy-in, when people start experiencing the mobility, that, oh my gosh, I can actually go to a different team now. And you now realize that, and the confidence now comes up, like, I'm no longer stuck. I don't feel stuck in my career whereby I'm just doing one thing every year. I'm never promoted. I never looked as someone who can inspire or who can contribute to results and lead a meaningful career. Like now you see a lot of people who are like now agents of change themselves, not just, I think we prioritize change in such do it at the organization level.
Yeah.
But change can be internal. You can say, actually now, all I just want to do is move from this post to the next post. And that's the biggest change you can make because it positions you in a different psychological safety than you were previously.
It does.
And that thing that trickled down so quickly, it was just so phenomenal to see. And thank you. Because I hardly think we didn't thank each other enough, but thank you so much for
very emotional.
So yeah, so looking forward now, what are your personal goals that you are setting for this year that you want to achieve?
Well, for this year, it's a bit of a personal one.
Yeah, the ones you're willing to share.
Yeah, I'm going to share this one because I think it's applicable for me both in my personal and professional life. And that is, I realized we get so hurt or offended if someone breaks a promise or doesn't keep their word to us, or, sometimes maybe your manager said, if you KPIs look like this, maybe you'll get something like that, and it doesn't happen, So we end up being so either hurt or disappointed or whatever the case may be. And this year I want to be more true to myself in a sense that if I make a promise to myself, I want to hold myself accountable to that. And I don't want to break the promises I make to myself. I don't know if people watch Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, I love Grey's Anatomy. I cried almost like every season. There was not a moment where I didn't cry.
I watched very early days of Grey's, and Meredith says in a voiceover, she says this one quote, and it has stuck with me ever since. And it's with our parents to defy. We break the rules we make for ourselves. And I think that's so profound because it's true. And it's like something small to something big, to, I'm going to drink more water this week, to, I'm not going to message him. You know what I mean? So it's, I just want to be more, I want to be
more accountable to yourself.
There we go.
Yeah. That's
nice. Because I think it's applicable in both personal and professional settings. So if I can stay true to myself in my personal life,
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leonore, for joining us, and all the best. Nothing is stopping you from rising. So thank you so much for having me as well in your space and into your orbit for today for a few seconds. And anything that you want to take away from today?
I think for today, our message is for sure kindness.
Yeah.
Kindness, being kind to yourself, being kind to others, because a small gesture of kindness can make a world of difference for someone in a situation. So next time,